Hi guys, so I was watching some of the Russia-Ukraine news coverage the other night and there was the very briefest mention of Chernobyl, and it inspired me to grab a film off my shelf that I've not seen in quite a few years, the Chernobyl Diaries. Now, I did ask myself the question, is it a little bit insensitive to do this particular review right now? I did think about this for more than a few minutes, but then I thought to myself, well, Chernobyl's kind of a different incident completely to the Russia-Ukraine war. You know, Chernobyl's been done and finished for 35 years now. We're way past the point where people are bothered about there being TV shows and films to do with Chernobyl. Eventually we'll get to that point with the Russia-Ukraine war as well. Incidentally, if you ever want to watch a serialized drama about the Chernobyl incident from 1986 and what actually happened in that incident and how the Soviets tried to cover it up and deal with it, I highly recommend this TV show, which is actually called Chernobyl. It's 6 episodes long. I think it all adds up to about 4.5 hours of screen time, but it's absolutely fantastic. It's really, really good. And at the opposite end of the realism spectrum, we have this 90 minutes of cock and bull from Oren Peli, the man who brought us Paranormal Activity. I've seen this film twice, I think, in the past, and I've always remembered it as a found footage film, but I think the title sort of tricks you into thinking that a little bit, because I'm reminded of George Romero's Diary of the Dead, and I think anytime you hear the word diary in relation to a horror film, it makes you think of people doing video diaries. But no, this film is not a found footage film, although at times it does feel like that the camera movements have a certain feel to them. Like maybe there's just one cameraman in amongst the action, desperately trying to keep up with what's going on. I've always had a real fascination with Chernobyl, by the way. It's a bit morbid on my part, I guess, but I think a lot of people do have at least one real-world incident or accident that they're fascinated with for reasons they can't explain. With my son, it's Titanic. He's asked me in the past to buy him books for Christmas to do with the Titanic so he can learn more about it, and I'm fine with that. Why not? But for me, my personal interest, for whatever reason, has always been Chernobyl. So anytime there's a new TV show or film to do with that place, that incident, I'm always there. So the story for this starts off a little bit like Hostel. We've got a group of American tourists floating around Europe, seeing the sights. Eventually they come to the Ukraine, and I think the long-term goal is to get to Moscow. That's where they want to finish their holiday, but they never actually end up leaving Ukraine because they come across this guy called Yuri who offers something called extreme tours, and one of his tours involves taking you into the exclusion zone of Chernobyl, so you can sort of take pictures for a couple of hours. Yuri has a little bit of an agreement with the military personnel who run the checkpoints outside Chernobyl, backhanders, you know, he pays them off, and that way Yuri can take his tourists inside the zone. But this particular day, something goes wrong. The military are not letting Yuri pass the checkpoint for reasons they don't explain. Clearly there's something going on inside the exclusion zone we're not meant to know about. And this comes back into the story later on. But for now, Yuri is unfazed. He takes his tourists in a different route, a secret route that he's not meant to use. So a little bit naughty. But of course, the van ends up breaking down, sort of. And Yuri and our main characters, our tourist characters that we're following, they're all trapped. And there are various threats afoot. For one thing, the radiation. I mean, you're not meant to be in the exclusion zone for more than a couple of hours, I think, just to be safe. But these characters end up going way past that 2 hours. And then there's the potential threat of the actual military if they get caught in there. And there are also wolves and bears in the area, which I believe is realistic to the more wilder parts of the Ukraine. And also there are these strange, bold people we keep catching sight of throughout this movie. Are they radiation victims who are not too pleasant? So lots of different things going on in this film. And let me tell you, from the minute that I saw this trailer come out back in 2008, I was absolutely desperate to watch this film. The Chernobyl Diaries has probably my favourite type of narrative structure for a horror film, which is that of the slow build-up in the first half. You get to know a certain group of characters, possibly on a geographical journey, as is what we have here, and then in the second half, the swift descent into madness and the violence, but not before then. I much prefer the shape of a story to be like this than doing the whole, oh, we must have a kill every 10 minutes, including right at the start. Chernobyl itself, or should I say Pripyat, the town where Chernobyl is based, it looks absolutely fantastic in this. It does help the fact that they were actually filming there. I don't think you could have done this movie without actually filming in Pripyat, because everybody sort of knows what it's supposed to look like. You can't just bluff it. I'm guessing they couldn't go into this area for more than like 2 or 3 hours a day to film. You know, I can easily imagine the director saying at the start of a day, look, no script revisions today, no bullshit, just get the cameras up and running and let's get at it. And no lunches. Any radiation that goes inside you, that's your lunch. Now let's crack on. But this location looks absolutely fantastic on the screen. It helps that you know watching it that this is actually a real horror location where genuine horrors happened. You know, you can give me your fictionalised horror places like Crystal Lake and Haddonfield, and you can show me that bloke in 28 Days Later stood in front of what's supposed to be an empty London behind him, but we know that it's just made up, it's trickery. You know, what you see here is actually a real place. You know that there's like dozens of empty miles around these actors, and it's very effective. It sort of reminds me of when I watched Wolf Creek, and it's easy to believe that, again, miles and miles of genuine desert. It's not bullshit or CGI. But the indoor locations in this film are great as well, because I'm guessing that for the indoor shots, they had to sort of go to other areas. I think they went to Hungary as one of the places they went to. They look great. There are times in this where characters are just running through this like labyrinth of corridors and steel, and it's like if Freddy Krueger had a base in Ukraine, it would look like what you see in this film. It's really fantastic. I've seen more expensive horror films than this give you far less in terms of sheer volume of indoor locations and production design. It's really, really great. In terms of the soundtrack, it's only really at the start of the movie and at the very end that I actually noticed any music. So this film kicks off with Supergrass's All Right, one of my favourite tunes from the 90s. So that really gets me into it straight away when you see that playing over shots of the characters having a good time in Europe, and then just for contrast, right at the end when the film's finally done and we've had a sort of depressing ending without giving it away too much, we get this grungy paintball kind of aesthetic as the end credits come down. But everything in the middle, in the actual film, there's a lot of silence, which I think is a good thing, because if you're actually in Pripyat, it's probably going to be quiet as hell. I think they've tried to reflect that in terms of not overpopulating the film with musical cues. So let's talk about the characters a little bit, and let's start actually with Yuri, the Extreme Tours manager, the tour guide. He's absolutely amazing. I just feel like there should be more fans of this character out there in the wider world. There should be Facebook appreciation societies dedicated to Yuri, because he's so cool. The best line he comes out with is just after the characters have been attacked by a bear in one of the apartment blocks, just after everybody's made their way back to the van, Yuri says, "That was exciting though, right? And of course, no extra charge for bear attack." Absolutely brilliant. Although I do think the film misses a trick by killing this guy off. I think they should have had him escape in the dark and leave it a mystery as to whether Yuri gets out or not, and then he could have come back in a sequel, not set in Pripyat, somewhere else. Have Yuri have a second film where he's doing another extreme tour, maybe taking some people like whitewater rafting in Siberia or something, and then he exits the film so another survival thriller can play out. So he would become like the Tony Todd character in Final Destination, if you like, constantly there in every film but never quite in danger. But sadly that's not going to happen now. Out of the tourist characters, I'd say Anna Taylor-Dudley is the standout. I remember her from Paranormal Activity, The Ghost Dimension, in my opinion, one of the most underrated films in that series. I like the backpacker characters that are thrown into the mix here. I thought they were going to be the cannon fodder in this film. I thought they were going to be the first killed off, because by the time the van gets to the exclusion zone, I think they've had the least personality development out of everybody. So it's pleasing to me to see them do well in this film. The only weak spot, really, not just in terms of the characters, but in the overall film, is the Paul character. He's one of the main guys, and he's just so irritating. He's all right near the start when everybody's really happy and they're enjoying their holiday, but once the shit hits the fan, this guy is an absolute pain in the arse. He does one of the worst things you could do in a situation like this. So if you're in any group situation and you get into trouble, it doesn't have to be something like what you see in this film. It could just be a group of randoms walking on the moors and you get lost. Perfectly everyday occurrence. But the worst thing you can do when people are just starting to realise they're in danger is just start lashing out at people and blaming everybody for this, that and the other. It's like, no, don't be a dick. That's not going to help. That's just going to bring negativity down on everybody. So the scene in the van where Paul does that to Yuri in this film is absolutely the low point of the film. And Paul's a dick later on as well. Like when we're getting towards the finale, the characters are in the dark outside and he's calling out for his brother, and I'm thinking, shut the frig up, you're giving away their location. And I think that would be my other negative as well, just some occasional bad decision making in this film. You know, there were quite a few times where I'm thinking to myself, no, don't do that, do that. Although I guess as someone who's seen the film 3 times, I do have the benefit of hindsight a little bit. One of the worst examples of bad decision making actually is done by Yuri, the best character. He goes out into the dark with his handgun at one point, and I'm thinking, why are you going out there on your own? You know there's a bear out there, just stay in the van till morning. Unless he just wants to get away from Paul for 5 minutes, which I guess would be fair enough. Now, in terms of the ending, I'm not going to give away what happens at the end of this, or who doesn't survive, who survives, or who possibly doesn't survive. But there's sort of a little bit before the end that I will talk about. So the characters who make it pretty much to the end, they come up into like the control room of Chernobyl, and it's just a genius bit of writing. I'd completely forgotten that this film finished off in that exact location. Because earlier on, the characters constantly sort of look over towards the power plant and think to themselves, best not go over there. That's like ground zero. Don't want to go in that direction. And then because the film plays out in such a chaotic fashion with characters running here and there, and there's like an underground maze of concrete and pipes, that somehow they end up at the power plant anyway, the last few characters, and it's just absolutely brilliant. I think this film is really fantastic. 19% on Rotten Tomatoes. Bog off with that. It's really good, actually. Time to show you the version of the film that I've got. Here it is. Here's my Blu-ray, as I briefly showed you earlier. I'm not sure if my previous 2 watches of this were on this disc. I think they might have been on Sky, which is the UK's version of cable, essentially. But the film looks amazing on this Blu-ray. I mean, a lot of the time you buy these, shall we say, basic Blu-rays that don't have a lot of features or fanfare about them. I kind of feel like I'm not going to get that much of an improvement in terms of picture quality to what I might have watched the film in before. But this is amazing. It's like borderline 4K. It's really, really sharp. I was really impressed with it, and definitely improvement over wherever the hell I watched the film previously. In terms of features, it's got an alternative ending on it, which I was fascinated to see, because I think it's actually a better ending than the one in the movie. The one you get in the movie, which I've not talked about, and I'm not going to talk about because I'm not going to spoil it, it's a little bit there to sort of please the Friday night cinema crowd. It's like one last scare. Whoa! You know, the sort of thing you might see at the end of an I Know What You Did Last Summer film. The ending that you see in the alternative version, I just think it fits the movie better. Let me know what you think if you've seen the alternative version. There's one deleted scene that you can watch in the features, which is about a minute long, and I honestly don't know why they left it out, because the film's only 88 minutes. It's not like it has pacing issues, so it's a bit of a mystery, that one. And the only other feature of note is you can watch a Yuri's Extreme Tours commercial, which is about 2 minutes long. It's quite funny. It's worth checking out if you've got this Blu-ray disc. So there it is. That is the Chernobyl Diaries. Very impressed with this. This is my 3rd viewing, and my opinion of the film has skyrocketed since the first 2 times I watched it. I liked it from the past, but this viewing, opinion's gone way high. So let's get to the bag of terror and find out how this is going to translate into a score. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4... 4.5 bloody axes out of 5. I think it's been quite some time since I gave a score this high. It feels like I've gone at least 20 reviews without giving a score like this. So yeah, I fully recommend the Chernobyl Diaries. It doesn't have a great reputation, but I have always enjoyed it, and on this occasion I really, really enjoyed it. So I will definitely be checking it out again in the future, I'm sure. And I wish it had an audio commentary. I'd love to put this on again this week and just watch the film being talked about, but sadly my Blu-ray disc does not have that. Right, that's the end of the review. I'll be back another time. Until then, cheerio, bye-bye.